Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspectives on All India Radio. This is Manoj Singh Rana, and with me is Aditi Lumba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar pitches for a strong ecosystem of technology and innovation to facilitate UN peacekeeping operations. India extends its support to the UK for COP26 summit at Glasgow in November this year. Indian Cabinet approves MOU with the United States on cooperation in the field of geology. UAE confirms Afghan President Ashraf Ghani in the country on humanitarian grounds. And in World Athletics Under-20 Championships at Nairobi, India wins a bronze medal in 4x400 meter mixed relay team event. As the nationwide free COVID-19 vaccination campaign at government facilities for those above 18 years is underway, we advise our young listeners to get vaccinated and help others get vaccinated. We also advise our listeners not to lower their guard as COVID-19 remains a threat to our health. Please stay at home unless it is essential to go out and continue to follow these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki duri for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. For any COVID-related information and guidance, contact the national helpline numbers 011 2397 8046 and 1075. And now the news in detail. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Wednesday said the 21st century peacemaking must be anchored in a strong ecosystem of technology and innovation that can facilitate the UN peacekeeping operations in implementing their mandates in complex environments. Dr. Jaishankar said this while chairing the UN Security Council open debate on technology and peacekeeping at the UN headquarters in New York. He announced India's support to the UN in the rollout of Unite Aware, a technology platform for peacekeeping missions. The External Affairs Minister said the UN peacekeeping missions continue to operate in challenging settings involving terrorists, armed groups and non-state actors. He said as nature of peacekeeping has become more complex, it is vital that our capabilities to secure the peacekeepers keep pace. Dr. Jaishankar said India believes in walking the talk when it comes to the safety and security of the UN peacekeepers. He said peacekeeping continues to play a crucial role in India's vision of ensuring international peace and security. The External Affairs Minister said serving under the blue flag 174 gallant Indian soldiers have made the supreme sacrifice, the largest number among the troop contributing countries. He said today over 5,000 Indian personnel are deployed in 9 missions. The External Affairs Minister said as a reflection of our deep commitment to protecting the protectors, the Government of India provides 2 lakh doses of COVID-19 vaccine for the UN peacekeeping personnel worldwide. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and Foreign Minister of Estonia, Eva Maria Limets, also spoke at the event. It is the second signature event under the Indian presidency. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, who is in New York to chair high-level meetings in the United Nations Security Council, UNSC, laid a wreath at the UN Peacekeepers Memorial at the UN headquarters in New York today. Jaishankar was accompanied by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. India and the UN also exchanged the MOU in support of partnership for technology in a peacekeeping mission. The MOU was exchanged between India and the UN in attendance of Jaishankar and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Under India's August presidency, Jaishankar chaired high-level meetings at the UNSC. This meeting comes as the Taliban on Sunday took control of Kabul and placed themselves in the presidential palace in Kabul. Environment Minister of India, Bhupendra Yadav, has said that India is committed to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC framework, and the Paris Agreement. He said India will work constructively for a successful and balanced outcome at COP26. The minister has extended India's full support to the UK for COP26, which will be held in Glasgow in November this year. The minister had a detailed meeting with Alok Sharma, COP26 President-designate in New Delhi. During the meeting, they discussed issues related to climate change, COP26 and the India-UK 2030 roadmap. Meanwhile, Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also met the COP26 President-designate Alok Sharma in New Delhi and discussed various issues related to climate change and specifically COP26. Ms. Sitharaman stated that India is among a few G20 countries on track towards the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement goals and has taken decisive actions to tackle climate change. She said the government is taking concrete steps to meet its commitment on the target of 450 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030.
Cabinet has approved Memorandum of Understanding MOU between India and United States of America on cooperation in the field of geology. With this, geological knowledge regarding Eastern Himalaya syntaxes and Ladakh plutons are to get boost. The MOU will provide an institutional mechanism between Geological Survey of India (GSI) and the Florida International University (FIU) on cooperation in the field of geology. The United Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has approved the MOU on cooperation in the field of disaster management, resilience and mitigation signed between India and Bangladesh. In March this year, during the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Bangladesh, the MOU seeks to put in place a system so that both the countries benefit from the disaster management mechanisms of each year. It will also help in strengthening the areas of preparedness, response and capacity building in the field of disaster management. The MOU envisages that India and Bangladesh will extend mutual support to each other at the time of large-scale disaster in the field of relief, response, reconstruction and recovery.
The United Arab Emirates said on Wednesday that it is hosting former Afghan President Ashraf Ghani on humanitarian grounds after he fled his country amid a Taliban takeover. The UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation can confirm that the UAE has welcomed President Ashraf Ghani and his family into the country on humanitarian grounds. Ghani fled Afghanistan on Sunday as the Taliban closed in on Kabul before the insurgents walked into the Afghan capital unopposed. His whereabouts were unknown until Wednesday, with speculation that he had fled to Tajikistan, Uzbekistan or Oman. At least 3 people were killed in anti-Taliban protests in the Afghan city of Jalalabad on Wednesday. The militant group tried to set up a government and Western countries stepped up evacuations of diplomats and civilians. More than a dozen people were injured after Taliban militants opened fire on protesters in the eastern city. 2 witnesses and a former police official told to a media agency. The Taliban have promised peace following their sweep into Kabul, saying they will not take revenge against old enemies and will respect the rights of women within the framework of the Islamic law. The witnesses said the deaths took place when local residents tried to install Afghanistan's national flag at a square in the city, some 150 kilometers from the capital on the main road to Pakistan.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a discussion on India's security concerns amidst the developments in Afghanistan. In conversation are Anil Wadhwa, former ambassador, and Simran Sodhi, the journalist.
We also see that Taliban has now taken control of Afghanistan, and Afghanistan is headed towards a new government which will be dominated by the Taliban, and this has major security implications for India also. Ambassador Wadhwa, when we see this change happening in Afghanistan and we see this transition, how concerned should India be over this transition and what does it entail for India?
So I think as far as India is concerned, whatever the government in Afghanistan, in this case the Taliban-led government, the main concern is that Taliban should not be used by any country or any group, against anyone, and more so against India. India has had many projects in Afghanistan, many reconstruction and infrastructure projects. And of course, the Taliban have said that if India wants, they can complete the projects because they are for the people. But it remains to be seen as to what the policies of the Taliban are going forward. And this will only be clear after a few days. One major concern that India does have with the Taliban control, it has the backing of countries like Pakistan, like China, Turkey, perhaps Russia and Iran very soon as well. And while the government in India has tried to talk about some red lines, but that came a little later. and also the lines of communication with the Taliban have not been very prominent in the recent past. So therefore, we will have to once again open up these channels of communication, and the Taliban would really go ahead, and it's expected that they would listen to Pakistan, and that the opening for India would be reduced if that control is maintained. Of course, if the Taliban government has been so far created, trained and controlled by Pakistan, that control one cannot imagine will be loosened so easily. One must also remember that the highest ranking body of the Taliban is the Quetta Shura, named after the Pakistani town where they were based. And while the Taliban leadership may not like a total control from Pakistan, they do have deep roots, they have familiar connections and business investments in Pakistan. So certainly they will not have much of a reason to turn against Pakistan and immediately have a friendly handshake with a country like India. Second is the issue of security. The first is the top leadership of the Taliban itself, which includes Sirajuddin Haqqani. If you recall, his father, Jalaluddin Haqqani, was a minister in the Taliban government when the Indian Airlines flight IC-814 was hijacked and taken to Kandahar. We should also remember that the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which has links with the Taliban, was responsible for the 2001 parliament attack and also has been charged with the 2019 Pulwama suicide bombing. Also, the Haqqani network has been responsible for 2 attacks on the Indian embassy in Kabul in 2008 and 2009. And it was at that time suggested by US intelligence that the Haqqani network and Pakistan's ISI were behind the attack. The 2009 bombing of the Indian embassy in Kabul had led to the death of about 17 people, 83 people were wounded. So the threat which is confronting India is that if terrorism returns in Afghanistan and if these terrorist groups are supported, promoted by Pakistan, then of course they will be emboldened and motivated to carry out similar attacks in neighboring countries like India. So security is the main concern, and as I said, we have to watch out for the stance that Taliban adopts in the coming days.
Ambassador Wadhwa, as you mentioned about Pakistan, and we have seen that India and Pakistan have had tense relations, and there are border disputes not only with Pakistan today, that goes for China also. And we see China taking a greater interest in Afghanistan this time. We saw end of July a Taliban delegation also visiting China. And the statements that we have seen coming out of China seem eager to recognize a Taliban government in Afghanistan. How do you think this complicates the situation for India when we see that 2 countries like Pakistan and China, with whom we have tense relations, getting a strong playing hand in Afghanistan?
So there is, of course, clear indication that China seems to be working rather closely with Pakistan and Afghanistan, and that is included excluding India from all serious deliberations in the recent past. And that needs to be noted. With China unwilling to relent, the situation on the border, we know, remains tense. Ceasefire on the line of control with Pakistan seems fragile with every passing day. And so if India's northern and western borders look bad, the rise of Taliban following the US exit is going to make that worse. Obviously, India would seem to be encircled on its strategic frontiers at this moment. But, while the crisis in Afghanistan is huge, it has only further highlighted the problems which it has created for New Delhi, especially from the strategic and the security point of view. So I would agree that unless the situation looks better in terms of what the policies adopted by the Taliban themselves, or the fact that the countries who are now supporting the Taliban come to realize that it is going to be better to have a government which does not support terrorism next to them, the situation for India will continue to look bad.
Mr. Wadhwa, we also see that Moscow and Iran today are also taking a keen interest in Afghanistan, and they seem to be interested in seeing how their own regional interests play out as we see Afghanistan in this state of transition. And the feelers that one gets is also that both China, Russia are likely to recognize the Taliban government once it is formed. How do you think the fact that you have players like Iran and Russia also taking an active interest in Afghanistan, do you think this might make things a little easier for India, or do you think that they will primarily be concerned about their own interests and this is not going to be too much of help to India?
Taliban representatives have been engaging with Russia for quite some time, lately also with Iran many times. And this engagement has come about mainly because the Pakistanis were willing. Pakistanis, which control the Taliban, have been willing for them to open out these channels with Russia and with Iran. The support and understanding by these countries who are in the immediate vicinity for the Taliban remains important. It's also important for Russia that its underbelly is not exposed to terrorists who can move out, especially the ISIS, into Russian territories. It is also important for Iran that it does not see another influx of refugees. It also needs to preserve its interests as far as the ethnic minorities in Afghanistan are concerned. And there is, of course, the underlying Sunni-Shia divide, which has bedeviled relationships between the Taliban and Iran in the past. So obviously, they would be looking for accommodation there. Iran itself and Russia has been under sanctions from the United States. And so their primary interest was to see the departure of the United States from Afghanistan, which has now happened. The presence of Russia and Iran in the equation is not necessarily bad for India because they would certainly be much better as influencers than countries like Pakistan or China, with whom India seems to be having a relationship which has not seen any improvement in the recent past. In fact, the conditions as I described on the border, both the borders, are not looking good at the moment. And so therefore, in this mix, all that India can do is to watch the developments and work as much as possible through the others. In fact, as you've seen, there's been a shuttle diplomacy which has been carried out by the External Affairs Minister, Jaishankar, who's been to Iran and who's been to Moscow and, in fact, has opened up some channels with the Taliban. So I think that process will continue and India will try to minimize the security effects of a Taliban takeover in Afghanistan.
Mr. Vatsa, as you mentioned about the U.S. pullout, and we have seen that India and the U.S. have very deep relationship today, and in terms of the defense cooperation, a strategic relationship. But we've also seen, as we've followed the events unfolding in Afghanistan, that it seems to be a retreat for the United States. And it seems, as many analysts have pointed out, also a defeat of the United States in Afghanistan. Do you feel that the West seems to have suffered a defeat in Afghanistan, and that could embolden countries like Pakistan and other anti-West front? Do you think that adds to India's complications?
So I think, it's very dramatic to use the word defeat as far as the United States is concerned. The decision to withdraw from Afghanistan was taken by the Biden administration much earlier. It's been known for quite some time, and the Biden administration has been negotiating with the Taliban in Doha for quite a few months now. As a matter of fact, the decision to withdraw from Afghanistan was sought to be changed many times by Americans themselves, members of Congress, and also by other parties, other countries. But the United States has carried out its decision. Now, in that light, to call it a defeat would not be entirely correct. Of course, the manner of the withdrawal leaves much to be desired. I do not think that the withdrawal, the way it has taken place hastily and under great pressure as far as the United States is concerned, was something that the United States would have preferred. And obviously, it was an arrangement which has gone sour at a late stage. Only time will tell, when reports come out about what was agreed and how this was played out, whether this was something which was agreed upon or not. But we are where we are at the moment. I think the United States has realized its goal of leaving Afghanistan and ensuring that the Afghans fend for themselves. It did not want to remain involved. But on the other hand, the countries like China or Russia or Afghans themselves, or maybe not the entire Afghan population, but the Taliban certainly, and Pakistan in particular, would see this as an American defeat. You also asked me about whether it is a defeat for the West. I think the support that the West provided in terms of military capability on the ground in Afghanistan was based on the U.S. involvement in Afghanistan. And the decision of the U.S. to withdraw from Afghanistan was conveyed very clearly to the countries in Europe during the last visit of President Biden. And obviously they have taken a similar decision because they believe that transition would take place in which the Afghan government will be able to take care of the interests of Afghanistan, and that the transition to any other kind of government would be handled by them themselves. Now, obviously, it's not gone according to plan, and the pressure that has been felt by all the countries of the West, in addition to the United States, means that the terms were not either agreed to fully or that agreements were not kept.
And in the coming days, we will continue to keep an eye on Afghanistan and follow a very rapidly changing situation there. And we will also continue our discussions on India's security concerns as the position in Kabul changes. With these comments, we bring today's discussion to an end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Indian President Ramnath Kovind has accepted credentials from 4 envoys in a virtual ceremony. High Commissioner of Nigeria Ahmed Sule, Ambassador of Austria Katharina Weiser, Ambassador of South Korea Chung Jae-bok, and Archbishop Leopoldo Girelli, Apostolic Nuncio of the Holy See, presented their credentials. Speaking on the occasion, Mr. Kovind congratulated the envoys on their appointment and conveyed his good wishes to them for a successful tenure in India. He noted that India enjoyed close ties with all the 4 countries and shared a common vision of peace and prosperity. The ambassadors and high commissioners conveyed good wishes to the President on behalf of their leaderships and reiterated the commitment of the leaders to work closely to strengthen their ties with India.
A consortium of doctors and researchers from India, Brazil, Russia and South Africa have partnered to conduct a study on the epidemiological impact and intersection of the COVID-19 and tuberculosis pandemics in these countries. The Indian Ministry of Science and Technology in a statement said that under this joint research, the teams from these countries will explore the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the epidemiological characteristics of TB infection and search for mechanisms responsible for the interaction of these two processes. They will also search for strategies to mitigate the negative consequences of the pandemic and develop individual recommendations for each participating country. The recommendations can help overcome the impact of epidemics of respiratory viral diseases on the epidemic of tuberculosis. Brazil, Russia, India and South Africa are currently ranked second to 5th in the number of cases of COVID-19 and belong to 24 countries recognized by the World Health Organization with the highest burden of TB in the world. Moreover, BRICS countries have the largest number of cases of drug-resistant TB. Hence, the research will be conducted in these 4 BRICS countries, where one of the highest burden rates of both COVID-19 and TB has been recorded simultaneously. This is All India Radio giving you the world news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
Azadi Ka Safar every day with All India Radio from Monday the 16th of August. As part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, News Services Division of All India Radio brings to you the story of glorious struggle and sacrifices of freedom fighters on 100.1 FM Gold channel in the English news bulletins at 8:30 a.m., 2 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the World News. More than 30 civilians were killed on Tuesday following 2 days of intercommunal violence in Warrap state in central South Sudan, authorities said. Warrap is the home state of President Salva Kiir. Violence has been rife in a number of areas in the state, including Tanj North and Tanj East counties, which have been the scene of recent clashes. Warrap's information Minister Ring Deng told the Dawn English daily newspaper that 29 people were also wounded in the clashes involving 3 neighbouring communities of Luain, Lupahir and Teek. He attributed the cause of violence to the cattle raids. And now a report from the business world.
At the stock markets, the Sensex at the Bombay Stock Exchange dropped 163 points or 0.3% to end at 55,629. The Nifty slipped 46 points to 16,569. Both the Sensex and the Nifty hit its record intraday highs in the morning session. At the domestic forex market, the rupee appreciated 11 paise to 74 rupees and 24 paise against the US dollar. Among the global markets, key indices in Asia Pacific ended higher. So Japan's Nikkei 225 index added 0.6%. China's Shanghai Composite Index climbed 1.1%. South Korea's Kospi and Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index gained 0.5% each, and Singapore's Straits Times Index rose 0.4%. In Europe, London's FTSE 100 had declined 0.3%, and France's CAC 40 had dropped 0.4%, while Germany's DAX had shed 0.2% in intraday trade. So Brent crude oil futures advanced 70 cents to trade at $69.73 a barrel. US crude oil futures gained 54 cents to $67.13 a barrel. And back home, gold fell 152 rupees to 46,328 rupees per 10 grams in Delhi. This is Nishit Kumar for World News All India Radio.
The U.S. has sent 500,000 doses of Pfizer vaccine to Rwanda, White House spokesman Kevin Munoz has tweeted. It included part of 500 million shots pledged and purchased this summer by President Joe Biden's administration for the COVAX initiative, which delivers vaccines to poorer countries, he said. Rwanda, which has vaccinated 10% of its adult population, is yet to confirm receipt of the U.S. donation.
At least 1,941 people are known to have died in Haiti in Saturday's powerful earthquake, a rise of more than 500 in the previous figure, officials say. Rescue workers have managed to pull 34 people alive from the rubble, but many are still missing after the 7.2 magnitude quake. The search for survivors has been hampered by heavy rains brought this week by Tropical Storm Grace. Nearly 10,000 people have been injured and hospitals were left overwhelmed. India has won a bronze medal in 4x400 meter mixed relay team event at the World Athletics Under-20 Championships being held in Nairobi. India clocked 320.60 with its season best. It is a first medal for India in this edition. The 2021 edition of the championships will continue till the 22nd of August at the Nyayo Sports Complex.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Washington Post writes that Pfizer, Moderna, booster shots expected to become available starting September 20th, Biden administration says. The Wall Street Journal says that China sees risks in stepping into Afghanistan after U.S. withdrawal. The Wall Street Journal writes that Taliban hamper Kabul evacuations, crack down on protests in eastern Afghanistan. Gulf Times says that fall of Kabul and images that could tarnish Biden's legacy. The Guardian says UK government failing to help local leaders achieve net zero, and Financial Times says Germany's Baerbock sets out sharp break with Merkel era for Greens.
A quick look at the headlines once again. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar pitches for a strong ecosystem of technology and innovation to facilitate UN peacekeeping operations. India extends its support to the UK for COP26 summit at Glasgow in November this year. Indian Cabinet approves MOU with the United States on cooperation in the field of geology. UAE confirms Afghan President Ashraf Ghani in the country on humanitarian grounds. And in World Athletics Under-20 Championships at Nairobi, India wins a bronze medal in 4x400 meter mixed relay team event. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Ethiopia.
Vaishnav Jan to tene ki je piri parai jane re. Vaishnav Jan to tene ki je piri parai jane re. Par tu ke upkar kare thoe manna bhiman na aane re. Vaishnav Jan to tene ki je piri
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.